I missed out on some types of people you work with. Here's some more. You have the person that is always looking to get more hours. You've worked with them. They're that person you go to when you need somebody to work a shift. And that person's just always like, hell yeah, I'll take the hours. But eventually, if you become that person at work, they're just like, well, he'll work the shift. Let me just ask him. And then the one time they can't, you hate them forever. And you're like, well, I'm never doing him a favor. Because that person, guy or girl, when they need a shift taken, no one will ever help them out because that's just how it works. It's unfortunate and they get done dirty. And that person gets overlooked for promotions too for some reason. I don't know why. They're willing to work and they work extra shifts. Let's promote the other guy. Okay. Then you have that guy or girl whose significant other is always at your job. They're always there. They get in the way. They even help it's usually a guy and a girl. The guy will usually help the girl with their work because I used to go into GameStop before I worked there, and there's a girl that worked there. Her boyfriend would literally stand behind the counter when she was working and read a magazine. He was always there. He was there every time I was there. I don't know how because it's one thing just to be there hanging out, bring them something to eat, then leave. It's another to camp out there. It's another entirely to camp out there and camp out behind the counter. I mean, it's pretty ridiculous. But that significant other is always there. I work with a girl at a bank. Her husband came in at least 3 times a day because they were forever swapping cars for whatever reason, and he was in there 3 times. Another girl I worked with, I only saw him once a year on her birthday, and that was it. He didn't come in. He didn't do any of it. And then you'll have another worker that they come in from another line of business, and they try to run it like it's their old place of work. It's usually a manager. You have what's like a Walmart manager that comes into manager store. They're going to try to run it like Walmart, and that doesn't work. But they won't see it that way. They're like, well, Walmart works because that's the way I say it works, and they think they own the place, and they try to run it their way, and it's not really how it works. It's not. And then you work with somebody whose kid's always there. And I don't mean just like once in a while. Like my daughter's at my work sometimes, and most workplaces are like, unless they're just the worst, they're gonna be like, okay, cool, yeah, just don't make a habit of it. There's some, their kid is there every day. I went to a restaurant where I worked, and every day that girl's kids were in a booth coloring. So the babysitter was the restaurant. The restaurant didn't mind because usually that'll get you fired. But it didn't. And then you'll have that person that decides they don't want to work on Sundays to go to church and get mad when they get scheduled on Sundays. Because a lot of retail places, there's no, hey, I need this specific day off every week. It's more the deal of, well, hey, you can do that every once in a while. And they usually end up quitting and getting it because a lot of managers are just like, well, if you don't like working Sundays, go work at Hobby Lobby or go work at Chick-fil-A. You have all the Sundays off you want, or we can promote you to customer. And then you have the person that they work about 100 part-time jobs. They're part-time at your work, they're part-time at another work, they're part-time at another work, they do side hustles. Usually it's, they work 2 part-time jobs, they cut grass, they dog sit, they wash dogs, they paint, they're always up for odd jobs. You wonder when they find time to sleep and why they don't just get one full-time job. But whenever you question them, they're like, oh, I like both my jobs, man. But you can always tell they're burned out, but they're just always like, you don't understand. I work more jobs than you, so I work so much harder. Because those same people can be the one that they brag about how hard they work or stuff like that, which gets in the other person. That person that gets no sleep and wants to tell you about it. I only slept about 5 minutes last night. I got to work an 8-hour shift because I only sleep about 2 minutes tonight. Okay, are you bragging about how tired you are? Because people are not impressed. It's not a skill. All that says is you're just good at being tired, and that's not a skill anybody wants to have. Good at being sleepy, but there's somebody you work with that they'll talk about that, or they'll talk about something else. Or you got that person that's just lazy, but there's smart lazy and there's dumb lazy. The smart lazy, they know just the correct amount of work to do to look like they're doing enough work. In a lot of cases, managers are not going to notice. They're not paying that close attention. They're just like, oh, whatever, they're a warm body. But then you have the stupid lazy. They're the ones that don't do nothing, but the managers still don't notice it either. And those are the worst, and you just hope they get fired. And then the last one is the people that steal. Those fall into multiple categories because there's people that are good at it, and then there's people that are just stupid. They're just like blatantly taking money out of the register. Yeah, you're not going to work at a place, even like in 2006 when I worked at a place, everything was on camera. They even lied to us and said, well, corporate gets on and they look at the cameras. They especially like to look at them late at night. Yeah, I guarantee you, corporates, people that work at corporate are in their car at 4:59 headed home and not up at 10 o'clock at night watching the cameras. But I mean, they kind of perpetuated that belief. But there's people that will steal. There's all kinds of ways, like selling items marked down, marking stuff down at the register, just taking a drink every day. There's people that'll do that. There's people they'll charge something, then void it out and pocket the money. Although the bookstore I work at, my favorite was, they said, well, corporate performs sting operations. So they'll come up and buy a 50-cent newspaper and just leave the money, and they just want to see that you process the transaction. They'll come up when you're busy, and people get fired over it. People get fired over a 50-cent newspaper because we didn't even sell newspapers. But they acted like it was going to happen. And they didn't have that many sting operations. The GameStop I worked at, we got robbed. I wasn't even there that long and got robbed while I was working there. So it can happen, but people working there are going to steal more than anybody in the store. Because when I worked at Walmart, one of the guys would now this wasn't stealing per se. There was a term for it. I think it's called underselling. They sold .22 ammunition, which is almost as good as gold because it's just hard to come by. It's hard to keep on the shelves. People buy it. They love it. And the guy would, as soon as it came in, he would buy it all. And it's not stealing per se, but it's underselling, not allowing the customer first dibs. So they ended up having to send it back, or like having to fire him for stealing. It's harder and harder to do, but people find ways, and they're not always subtle about it. But those are just some more of the types of people you work with.